could get a message.
Yep.
And then I'll tweet that link out and we'll be ready to go. That. Hello there, and welcome to the Hawk Fanatic Hawkeye Hotspot podcast here on Hawk Fanatic. It is Thursday, May the 9th, a little after 9 a.m. Central Time. I am Rob Howe. If you're listening to us, the other voice you will hear is John Bonenkamp. If you're watching us on YouTube Live, he is the other face you're seeing other than my ugly mug on the stream. And he is sitting in for the vacationing Scott Docterman and recovering from what we know now is an Iowa football season without General Booty.
And that disappoints me. I mean, because there were so many headlines that you could have and so many ways you could write about it. But I think Iowa made a pretty good choice either way. So,
yeah. The name, in terms of name value, I think the winner would be General Booty, but I'm with John. I do believe Brendan Sullivan, who Iowa did get a verbal commitment from on Wednesday, May the 8th, from Northwestern, is the better of the two quarterbacks on the football field. And really, that's important. It's important to Iowa football. To us, it would have been more important to have somebody that could help us write headlines. But
right. And that's how I approach everything is how can it help us?
Right.
You know, start times, game start times, that sort of thing. It should all be directed towards us. But
please think of the media.
Right.
Please.
They never do.
Entitled.
Exactly. The entitled media, as we've been called before. But no, I was watching his video today and this was a really good pickup for them. When you look at the way he plays and what he can do, and you now have an immediate upgrade at that position in my mind.
You think he's an upgrade over McNamara or Hill?
Well, definitely over Hill.
Yeah.
But I mean, you don't know what Cade McNamara is going to bring this year. I mean, he's had two pretty serious injuries, and I know he's, coming back. We haven't seen him at full go yet. And so I think it gives you an option now if he isn't ready or if he struggles coming back. And that was what you didn't have 4 weeks ago. And so just to have that upgrade in my mind is you're way ahead of the game right now than what you were a month ago.
Yeah, what would be interesting to hear, and we never will, is what the discussions were like between the Iowa coaches and Brendan Sullivan on this visit, because we've heard, John, since Cade McNamara got here in December of 22, that he was the guy. He's the number one guy, unrivaled number one guy. The other guys are going to be backups. This is a different situation. As you said, McNamara being hurt last year changed the dynamic and the landscape of this. But was Sullivan told, hey, you can come in and the job's open, you compete, it's even playing field, or McNamara is number one going into camp, but you have a chance to compete with him? I'm just wondering what he was told that convinced him to come here, but I'm with you. I'm glad that he came here. And then I also think you have to have conversations with Cade as well and say, listen, you were pretty much, you were there, the open practice. He can't really do anything. He can't really move yet. And we're all, that was the end of April. Like you said, is he going to even be ready for the opener?
Right, exactly. And I mean, when was it he had his surgery? Was it October, maybe?
November? Yeah, he got hurt in October. I'm not certain when the exact surgery was, but I mean, what's it going to be, like 10 months out?
Right. And I mean, you're talking about, those kind of injuries, and I know this because I have dealt with a couple of high school kids who have had those injuries. That's a 9-month recovery, usually. And so if you start doing the math to it, you're talking July, of when he would be fully cleared to go late June, early July. I mean, it's going to be somewhere. So there isn't a lot of time for him to get ramped up. And I don't think Brendan Sullivan comes here unless he was told there's a really good chance you're going to play. And, or, you have a chance to play. You're going to, you're going to be able to compete for this job. And I mean, he's not going to come here to be, carrying somebody's bags. He's coming here to play. And so I do think that this is, they probably said to him, look, Cade's number one on the depth chart, but you can compete for the job. I can't, and so I think that's a good thing in my mind, because you don't know what you're going to get yet.
And while we may not have General Booty, we are certainly in range for a quarterback controversy, which is always fun.
Oh yes. And it'll start. We'll get that started probably around Big Ten media days. The questions will come up, and Kirk will deflect them, and yeah, it'll be discussed until the week of the season opener. And
I can guarantee you that they're going to play the guy that gives them the best chance to win.
Right. Yes. That's always.
We're going to play the guy that gives us the best chance to win.
Yep, and that's what we'll be told. And so, like I said, I just think that this will be an interesting competition, because again, we don't know what we're going to get from Cade McNamara yet. And I mean, he has not been healthy. He was not healthy at the beginning of last year, so we didn't really get a good look at him. And if he's had another major injury and a major surgery, you just don't know. So I think what happened yesterday was a pretty significant moment for this program heading into the summer.
Yes, and that gives them now 3 quarterbacks on scholarship currently at Iowa. When you throw in redshirt freshman Marco Linnaeus, we saw a little bit of him during the spring, and then again, he played a little bit in the bowl game. So we kind of have an idea of. Sorry, my dog is wanting to get some pets and was jumping.
I saw
up
a
on
tail in the ear there. Anyway.
The magic of home offices.
I love it. It's great.
But James Rezar, recruit from Jacksonville, Florida, will be here next month. So that gives you 2 veterans, 2 young guys. That's a pretty good quarterback room in this day and age, John, when you see so much movement. And I do want to point out to folks, and I mentioned this to John before we started recording, and I'll pull this up now because I have no memory anymore and I forget people's names. So Northwestern this morning picked up a transfer quarterback, Mike Wright, committed to Northwestern. 1 season of eligibility remained, 14 career starts at Vandy and Mississippi State. So Mike Wright is currently on his 3rd college. Brendan Sullivan, Cade McNamara currently on their 2nd college. This is from Adam Rittenberg, John, his kind of take on this addition for Northwestern. Northwestern has pursued Wright before, including when he transferred to Mississippi State. Jack Lausch had a solid spring, but Wright immediately becomes the favorite to start for the Wildcats this fall. He recently visited Northwestern. So Jack Lausch was the guy that Sullivan was competing with, who didn't. So there was something at Northwestern that spooked Sullivan into thinking he may not be the starter. So he's looking for a more of a guarantee that he has a chance to play. And now they end up bringing in another guy anyway. This is just kind of insanity and musical chairs. And long story short, as I said at the beginning of that statement, being able to have 2 guys who have started Big Ten games and 2 young guys to develop is a pretty good setup for Tim Lester in year 1.
Yeah. And I mean, and it looks like, and just in the video I watched today, he looks like he will be able to do some things that Tim Lester wants to do. And so, Tim Lester is stuck to the plan. And it was the plan he told us about when he met with us back in the winter after he was hired, that, he's going to put the offense in, he's going to see what he has, and then tailor the playbook to what he has. And I think that the offense, for the most part, is in. And now it's okay, what do I have to work with here? And I think, like you said, it is a really good quarterback room now. It is in much better shape than it was a few weeks ago. And so that kind of adds more to that confidence that this offense is going to be better. I mean, it can't get any worse, but I do think it's you're now up to a point where this offense feels like it can be competent and get you points. And that's what you need with what else you have on this team.
Some background on Brandon Sullivan. He is from Michigan originally, went to Northwestern. He's been there for 3 years, 3 or 4 years. I know he's got 2 years of eligibility remaining, which is important because if he were to win the job this year, you could potentially have a 2 year starter. And even if he doesn't win the job, he would likely be your projected starter going into 2025. So, that is a bonus as well. You're not just getting a 1 year guy.
Exactly.
And it worked out well with Cade because he got hurt. So now you get him for another year as well. So I think the way we look at recruiting, particularly this position, John, I think folks need, if their minds aren't open already, they need to continue to be open because this is I think this is the new normal. And you think about it, Iowa is picking up a quarterback that could potentially start for them in May of this. Think about that. If somebody would have told you that 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you would have been, yeah, right. Oh, my other leg, it plays Jingle Bells.
Right. It always, I mean, and you're right. Of all the positions in football that is going to really be impacted the most by the portal, I think it is this one because everybody's going to be looking for it. And it's no different than college basketball and what coaches look for now. Everybody's looking for experience. Nobody's going to want to develop anybody anymore. Now, you're going to want to develop somebody that can step in if you need them. But if you have a guy in your in your room that is young and you don't know a whole lot about, but oh, by the way, this guy's available out there that started somewhere else, it's gonna be a constant musical chairs, I think, at that position all around football. And I think there's going to be a lot of really good quarterbacks that will never get a chance to play because they're not going to be developed in some programs anymore. And that's going to be the way it is.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that all shakes out because you're right. I mean, as of now, like had Iowa not brought in a quarterback here, Marco would have gotten the second team reps. Right. That would have helped him develop going into next year. Now he's looking at third team and Reeser's probably scout team reps. So that's like 2024 is not going to be much of development for them. So what is their career arc? It's hard to say. And if they're not ready, do you bring another guy in over top of them? And I mean, it's going to be because you're going to have guys like the Tennessee kid that played Iowa in the bowl game, the true freshman that just lit them up. Yeah. You're going to have like the blue chip guys like that come in and play right away as true freshmen. But I'm with you. Then you're going to have these other guys that maybe got beat out at other schools because somebody brought in another transfer portal guy to beat them out. Yep. And it's just going to be tough to keep up with. And I wonder if it affects the quality of play, John.
It will. But I also think there's going to be a trickle down effect that you're going to see some guys go to, the lower level schools, whether it be, not non-Power 5 schools or whether it's FCS schools, and go down there and play well. And so I do think there may be a trickle down. I think it's going to benefit a lot of teams that aren't getting really good quarterbacks right now that might get one and can be a little patient with guys. And so, I mean, I think it's just going to be a trickle down effect that position has always been one, I always say that it's one of the toughest positions if you're a kid in college, because if you don't play, there isn't anywhere else you can play.
No,
it's like if you're a cornerback and you get beat out, well, maybe you can play safety, or maybe you can do this, or, whatever, there's places you can find them, but with quarterbacks, there is no spot. So I do think there's going to be a trickle down effect, but yeah, there's going to be a lot of kids that they're not going to get an opportunity to play because everybody's going to be looking for experience. Everybody's going to be looking for a chair to sit in, and it's going to be moving. Everybody's going to be moving around.
So Sullivan at Northwestern was 2-8. No, 2-6 as the starting quarterback. He was 2-2 last year, 0-4 during the train wreck of the 2022 Northwestern season. That was 1-11. He was 0-4. But he did throw 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but he completed 74% of his passes. And in this past season, he threw for 6 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, completed 64% of his passes. So that should be music to the Iowa fans' ears. Right. You've got another guy like Cade who completes or at their previous stops have completed a high number of passes. That seems to fit, as John said earlier, what Tim Lester is looking for. Quick passing game, getting the ball to Caleb Brown, getting the ball to guys in space, let them make plays. Iowa's starting to get some of those guys on the roster. You need a quarterback that can make the makeable plays, and I think he's that guy. Plus, he has the ability to move the pocket, which Tim Lester likes. Most offensive coordinators should like that. And then I think he has experience in RPO, which is another aspect of Tim Lester's offense, and his ability and threat to run in an RPO situation is also a benefit. Again, these are some of the things, John, that make him a good fit for this offense.
To me, the biggest thing is that they can complete passes.
Just great. That would be wonderful to see.
Yes, because just think about this offense the last couple of years and just those simple passes, 5 or 6 yards that weren't getting completed.
Yep.
And, this offense was not fundamentally sound in a lot of ways. A fundamentally sound offense wins a lot of games for this team. And so if you're not turning the ball over, if you're completing passes, you're way ahead of the game in my mind. And those numbers say to me, this is a pretty major upgrade in that room.
And big, overall, if you look at the strengths of, or what should be the strengths of this 2024 team, we know the defense is going to be salty. The defense, even losing a second round pick in Cooper DeJean, there's still so much talent coming back. You also lose Joe Evans, and other guys on the defense that will have to be replaced. Just rotational guys too. You want to make sure you build that up. But the defense is not it's not even really even. I'm not sure there is a concern on defense. Special teams. Reese Dakin, however he says his last name, I probably should learn that. I know how to spell it. It's just I'm not. When I got into this business, John, they didn't tell me I had to talk.
Right, exactly. That's the way
I just need to know how to spell it.
Right.
So,
exactly, and that's you're right. It's a whole new world now. But no,
but he looked good on that Saturday. We got to see him last month. I think he hits the ball pretty well. So special teams should be pretty good. I think if the offense is average,
right,
this team could do some big things this year. And I think the way we sit here today, I think average is doable.
Yes, I do too. I mean, you think about some of those games last year that a couple of those games late in the year when they lost. I mean, some of those all games. What happens in the Big Ten championship game if you're moving the ball and not turning it over with the way the defense is playing? Do you probably still lose? Yeah, but you know what? You're in that game for a while. They just felt like they were never in that game. So if you're in games, that makes a big difference in my mind. And so, like I said, just don't turn the ball over. Just move the ball, complete passes, just be efficient. And this is a major upgrade, I think, for this offense, if you can do that.
I wouldn't mind to see him then put in some design run plays for Marco either.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
a lot of schools are doing like they have like a separate wildcat type quarterback, and I'm not sure that fits Marco, and he can throw a little bit, but I think he gives you the wildcat option or something like that. But he can also throw a little bit too, so that wouldn't be bad. I mean, I don't know, that may rub Cade or Sullivan the wrong way, but it also might be something that keeps Marco engaged.
Yes, and it what does, and you're right, and because I think, and Tim Lester said this back in the wintertime, that everything's on the table, and so the one thing I took away from that press conference back then was there was going to be an open mind.
Yeah,
And I thought the last couple of years, 2 or 3 years with this offense, that there were some tools there they were not using. And I go back to Tyrone Tracy.
yeah.
Um, and so if Marco is a tool you can use, and there's something I think you got to use it. I think you've got it, and I think Tim Lester has that open mind to use that stuff. And so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can go with this offense right now with what he wants to do. So it'll be curious to see really once you get into the summer and see what you got, what they do. And so I just feel like they're in a much better place than they were 48 hours ago.
Now it's time, John, to address the wide receiver position. I think they've got to ask, and I want to let folks know too. I believe Iowa is currently at 88 scholarships, so 3 over.
I thought they were
So,
3.
so we're going to have to do some math and some maneuvering is going to have to be done before training camp there. And I do think they want to add at least one wide receiver, which I think would be a good idea. That's the position now that has the most question marks. I like Caleb Brown, loved what I saw from him at the open practice. Seth Anderson was hurt, so tough to say what we're going to get there. They've got some freshmen coming in. Jacob Bostic was that one. Make that make sense to me, John. Make that the kid had, I think Iowa and Illinois were his Power Five offers coming out of Palatine.
Mm.
This time he had better offers than he did when he was coming out of high school, but he didn't do anything here to garner those offers. To me, I don't get it.
It goes back to, and I think it goes back to a lot of what we were talking about earlier. That hey, there's an experienced guy in the portal from a Power Five school that has a lot of talent. Let's go get him.
He's not really experienced, even.
Right? I know. But I mean, it's like I think they look at it as Big Ten guy in the portal, and he was getting a lot of raves during the spring before he decided to leave.
But I mean, Iowa State offered him as soon as he went in the portal.
Right. And yeah,
it doesn't add up to me, is what I'm saying.
No, I think this portal world is. I think every time somebody sees I think there are just programs that every time they see somebody that goes into the portal from a Power Five school, they're immediately intrigued.
Yeah.
No matter what they did, and it's it's funny to watch. And I mean, his name going in there because, like I said, everybody was talking about him in one of those early availabilities. Hey, he's doing a great job. Hey,
I talked to him. He loved it. Hey, I got to see Tim Lester recruited me out of high school. I went up and said, "Hey, Coach Lester, great to see you." He was in the portal a few days.
And then in the portal as up, see you. So but yeah, they have to go find somebody. They've got to go find an experienced pass catcher. The kid from Missouri State that visited that ended up going somewhere, and he said
Fresno.
Yeah,
Raylan Sharp. He ended up at Fresno.
Yeah, and he said he needed the money. So you knew he was probably out of their price range. But those kind of guys are out there, and I think you got to go get one of those. And just to add the experience in the room, you've got, like you said, there's 2 really good ones in there. And if Seth Anderson can be healthy, I think that's he will be really good. But you still got to go get somebody, I think. And I know you don't have any room, but airlines still sell tickets to and then bump people when it comes time to bump them. So it's the business, and it's the business now. And so I think if there's somebody out there that wants to come here, I think you got to go get them.
I like Weechin too at receiver, and he's the type of guy like that we were talking about, where like a Tyrone Tracy, where he's versatile and very dangerous in space. And I liked what I saw during the spring game with him, getting the ball on jet sweeps, doing some different things there. Those are the type of things John and I are talking about. But I think if you could get one guy out of the portal,
Right.
it's a tall outside guy. That's really what I mean. Seth Anderson can play outside. I think outside's probably his best spot. But a Brandon Smith type, a Tavon Smith type, no, that's not easy to get. But
No.
somebody that can win 50-50s, things like that, I think they need an outside guy.
Right. And I, like I said, I think you have the pieces in that room, and I think they probably know what you can do with some of these guys. But I still think you need, like you said, an experienced guy, somebody with some size that just gives you, because if one of those other guys goes down injured, now you're kind of scrambling again. So I think you just it's a room you have to improve the depth in. And if you can find somebody depth and experience wise to help you, I think you got to go do it. And then worry about what's left, when it comes time to August. So
Yeah, and I think Howard and Bowie, the two kids that were true freshmen last year, have a chance to make a jump this year as well. I think they kind of got their feet wet last year. Reese Vanderzee, kid from Central Lyon, who's coming in this class and had offers from most of the Power 5 schools in our footprint, Iowa State, Kansas, schools like that. Maybe Wisconsin, Minnesota, not sure, but big, tall guy, 6'4", 6'5", really good basketball player too. He might be that guy. So maybe if you get a 1-year outside guy, that lets him kind of not have to be thrown to the wolves right away. And then, because really, John, they've got to start cultivating this position. Too much attrition, too much lack of development, misidentification in recruiting. Enough's enough with the receiver position. They hopefully made a coaching change. They can find ways to develop guys at this position, because Iowa's not going to go out and get 4 5-star kids out of high school. The top guys in the portal aren't going to come here right now because of the reputation of Iowa's offense. Yep. They've got to start developing receivers.
Yeah, and that's again, like you said, that's why they made a coaching change. And we'll see where this coaching change goes. But I do think that you're right. I mean, you've got to start having. You cannot have this every year where you've got 1 or 2 older guys and then a bunch of really younger guys. The younger guys are going to have to start stepping up, and you're going to have to develop them, and you're going to have them be ready, because I do think there's talent there. It's just not experience. Now you got to give them experience. Now you got to teach them, because like you said, you're not going to go find them in recruiting. It's going to be hard to find them in the portal, because I think they're going to bring big money. And I think that's, and so you're going to have to develop that room. And that is going to be one of the biggest things with this offense in the next 2 or 3 years. Where does this position group go, and how do you develop these guys?
Yeah. And if it may take some creativity, but that's fine. I mean, because there are guys out there. Charlie Jones came here as a walk-on from Buffalo.
Right.
That doesn't happen every day. That's not, the odds of that happening aren't great, but there are guys out there. It's about identifying them and then developing them, because of the offense that Iowa runs is not and hasn't been wide receiver friendly.
Right.
Guys know that. So what can you do to tell them that they will be used the way they want to be used? And then when they get here, getting them technically sound and developed to work in your system. They may not be NFL guys, but as long as they can help you in what you're trying to do, that's the most important thing. Can they complement what you're doing at tight end, where you always have NFL players? Right. Running back, which is a loaded room right now, I think. That's a really strong position. Can you just get some receivers to help you stretch the field and get guys out of the box? To me, as long as the quarterback play is sound, which hopefully it is with 2 experienced guys, can you stretch the field and so this offense can at least get close to reaching its potential.
Right, and that's been the problem the last couple of years. Is I mean, every game is, the offense wasn't very good. It was bogged down because
Yep.
there was so much traffic in that one spot. So you had to take shots deep to be successful, and they didn't have the pieces to do that. You've
No.
got to figure out how to do that. Not saying you have to do it on every play, not saying you have to, but you have to have that option there because you can't just keep having, because that everybody in that one area ruins your short passing game with your tight ends and everything else. There's no room to move. So they are going to have to, if there's one thing that Tim Lester has to figure out going into the season, is how do you stretch that out? And that is, and if you think you've got the guys to do it, great. Now you got to go do it.
Yeah, and there is absolutely no reason why this offensive line should not be effective this year with the experience that they have coming back. I think it's in the neighborhood of 150 career starts for this group. And yeah, it would have been great to have Caden Proctor, but that ship has sailed again and ain't coming back to shore. So you've got guys that basically, other than Rusty, who was playing a lot at the end of last year at left guard, you've got guys that have all played and back at the same spots, provided Logan Jones gets healthy and, some Dunker was out during the spring a little bit. But if they're healthy, John, that should not, if that's an issue again this year, if they're healthy, then there's a bigger problem. Right. There's a organizational problem, I would say.
Yeah, that group is going to have to perform. And like you said, because there is experience there and there's depth there. And it's like, so once you find that five has to produce on a daily basis for this offense to work, because just running the ball and whatever else. And I've tried to explain that to people. Yeah, there was a lot wrong with this offense, but one of the things where it really started was you weren't getting anybody any time to do anything and not giving anybody any room to run. So this group is going to have to perform this year, and I think they will. I mean, I think they're a good group of guys. I think there's a lot of talent there. Once you figure out where everybody's going to go, then I think they're going to be in really good shape, but they're going to have to really be in good shape.
I don't know. Have there been, maybe Alaric Jackson was a 4-year starter at left tackle, and I think Mason Richmond will be a 4th-year starter at left tackle if they keep him there, which I assume they will do. But they move, like John said, they move pieces around trying to find the best 5. So, and I think would help the offensive line, because everybody is affected by you not being able to stretch the field.
Right.
Exactly. If everybody's in the box, there's more guys to block than you have blockers. So that hurts the offensive line. If you give them a fair shot, what can they do? And that's another part of what I'm hoping to see this year.
Right. And again, it goes back to, again, like you said, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. You have all that traffic in one spot.
Yep.
Even it magnifies little things on the line, because like you said, now there's more people coming. Now there's more, there's more in that area. And so again, you got to widen that field a little bit, and you've got to have that ability to, you have to have the ability to run the ball, you have to stretch the field. And when we say run the ball, it is going to be also with, does your quarterback run? And so, again, there's a lot of things that have to happen for this to work. And I think Tim Lester knows what he's doing, and I think he's got an idea. Now it's a matter of putting everybody in the right spot and doing it. And I do think they're in a much better position now.
Yeah, I do as well. And I'm not sure when Sullivan will arrive, but I know it's finals week here in Iowa City. So I imagine Northwestern's on a somewhat similar schedule. So he can finish up there academically and get here and get into the playbook as soon as possible. It's kind of a wonky month now, too, because you've got, it's a contact period in recruiting. So most of the coaches are out on the road offering a lot of wide receivers in the 2025 class. You can check my Twitter feed. It seems like I write about a new wide receiver offer, and they're casting a wide net, John. They offered a kid in Florida, kid in Sandusky, Ohio, kid in Illinois. They're casting a wide net at this position. So I think they get it. I think they understand that they need to start supplementing that position and developing. I think they get it, but now you got to convince these kids that this is the place to go. They're competing with programs that have more accomplished passing attacks, things like that. So can you convince these guys that, hey, I know what we've been, but you can be a part of what we're going to be?
Right. And I do think if there was one thing about Tim Lester's hiring that I think is really good is now you have an outside voice to come in and say, whoa, we need to fix this. Because you didn't have that, because everybody thought, well, we'll just keep rolling with what we've got because it's worked, blah, blah, blah. Now you've got an outside, you got the drone coming in, looking over and saying, whoa, we need to fix this. We need to fix this. We need to do this. And I think you've seen that. You've seen that with this quarterback room. I think you're going to see this now with the wide receivers, that this is what you need to do. This is because you weren't doing it. And so now you've got a new voice. And I think I don't think we understand really the impact of it, but I think it's pretty significant.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm intrigued. I'm cautiously optimistic, is which I've remained now for a couple of years during the off season, when I start to feel like, okay, it's going to turn around this fall, and it hasn't. It's gotten worse. I'm going to take that wait and see, cautious, optimistic approach. But yeah, like I said, it doesn't have to be a great offense. It just can't be as pathetic as it's been.
If you have an offense that, and what were they, 130th or whatever, if you have an offense that ranks 80th in scoring offense, if you have an offense that ranks, like in the 70s or 80s in passing, that's a big improvement when you think about it. And you look at it and say, well, that's not a very good, but it's still a step up. And to me, it's competency in moving the ball. Don't turn it over, be fundamentally sound. If you do that, you're going to win some games that you didn't win the last couple of years.
Yes, no question. And we'll see how it shakes out. It's an interesting schedule this fall as well. I think an early trip to Minneapolis, like at the end of September, which I haven't seen in a long time.
Yes.
So
that's a November one, and it's cold. And
yeah.
I've dealt with those. So
it'll be here before we know it. It's moving quick, but I'm going to soak up every day of downtime because I enjoy. Over the years, I've gotten to the point. John has been doing this longer than I have around here, and you get to the point where you really cherish May and June as a downtime. I love the seasons. I love what I do, covering sports, but it's nice to get a little time to recharge the batteries.
I had to scold somebody last night because they were like, "Oh, can't wait for August to get here." And I'm like, "No,
I can wait.
August can wait.
Yeah, we can wait. It'll be here before you know it."
Right. And it's like we've still got May and June here, and to just kind of see where this goes. So slow down. I don't want to see any countdowns on how many days it is or how many weeks it is till the opener and all that. We know when it'll be. Let's just kind of enjoy the summer. So.
We've got Dean in the chat room saying John is not dropping F-bombs like Scott. Let one fly out of respect for Scott.
Oh, fuck. I can do that very easily. Anyway. Go, Dean. Yeah, but I'll try to keep it clean because I always worry whenever I do radio shows that I'm going to slip and say something sometimes. So I'm just trying to keep it straight so I don't lose that edge. So
yeah, I do too. Whenever I do radio shows, because I'm so used to doing podcasts where I don't have a filter. I try to self-filter, but it's not always effective.
Right.
And Scott has a tendency to be a little bit more potty mouth on here than me, and then I go to Anchor to upload the podcast, and it says there's a button for explicit language, and I always push no. I dare them to catch me.
Let people be shocked.
Shocked. All right.
So anyway.
All right. That'll wrap up the football talk for the most part. We're going to hit a little Caitlin Clark effect in the WNBA, take a look at some men's basketball, and also do a little baseball. After this break, I want to let folks know that support for the podcast comes from Systems Unlimited, celebrating 50 years of providing services to people living with disabilities and mental health needs throughout East Central Iowa. A list of their services and upcoming events can be found at sui.org. That is sui.org. Thank you to Systems Unlimited for the great work they've been doing in our community for over half a century, and we certainly appreciate their support of the podcast. We're going to hear from a few more sponsors now, and John and I will be back on the other side to talk some more Hawkeyes. Hang in there.
Go ahead and take a break because you're lighting.
And we are back to let you know that switching is easy. We do it all the time. We switch on the lights, we switch TV channels. Some of us switch partners while square dancing. Well, that's a stretch. But what's not a stretch is you can switch and save with State Farm. In fact, State Farm agent Chad Birch right here in Iowa City can switch you over so you can start saving today. Chad and his team are ready to welcome you to the State Farm neighborhood. With Chad Birch, it's easy to switch and save. Just give him a call when you want the real deal, like a good neighbor. State Farm is there. You done any square dancing lately, John?
I have not, and I've not since elementary school. So,
did you switch partners a lot?
Yeah.
Isn't that part of square dancing? Is the switching of partners?
Oh yeah.
So that's kind of a redundant ad, but we love State Farm for their sponsorship.
Well, and I'm a big State Farm fan too. So.
We're with State Farm. We're with State Farm. Ryan Merkin from Your Prep Sports, State Farm. Pat Hardy, State Farm. I don't know about Doc. I don't know where he shops for his insurance. But anyway.
Yeah, it's a good club.
Where do we go next? Let's go to men's basketball.
Okay. That's
been a kind of a bone of contention, I think, this offseason with the NIL and losing Tony Perkins and, Patrick deciding to go to Butler. Matt Cross comes here to visit from UMass, visits Iowa and Wisconsin, and ends up at SMU. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that was NIL related.
I think so. Just maybe a bit. So, I still laugh at those poor SMU guys from the 80s. I'm like, they're thinking, hey, we're ahead of our time here. So anyway,
think about Bon Szymanski.
Yes,
he helped pay one of his players' rent. Now that's totally legal.
Oh yeah,
for the NIL could just pay it.
Right, exactly.
So Kelvin Sampson. Oh no, he was text messaging people.
Yeah, it's so funny to look at some of these things now and how everybody. Oh my God, and now it's like, okay, everybody else is doing it. So
yeah,
those poor SMU guys. So I'm thinking there's a new SMU. I'm thinking it's the spawn of the boosters from the 80s. That because you're starting to see that's why SMU's in the ACC now, and I think they realize there's money going around now. So.
Yeah, they got some oil money down there.
Yes, and that money that money's always going to be there.
Yep.
So those places are set up pretty well.
Iowa is still looking at some big guys. I think you look at the roster, John, and they need another inside guy. I think I know what we're going to get from Riley Mulvey after the redshirt year. It's hard to know,
right?
But Owen Freeman needs some help. I think they've got the two freshmen coming in, Koch and what's the other kid's name? I can't think of it now. Chris
Canadian kid.
Taggio. Chris Taggio. Yeah. I think both of those guys could be in the rotation right away, especially Koch.
Yeah. And I
think they're fine perimeter wise. They're going to need to find somebody to replace Cricky.
Right. And you're going to need that big experienced body, and you're going to have to go in the portal. And I do think, when you look at, when I was reading the tweet today on how much the market is paying for some of these guys, I think you're going to have to kind of moneyball it, go find somebody that you could get cheaply that can give you good minutes. And I don't know how many of those there are out there, but you're going to have to do that. I think, I think there's a good nucleus here. I think there's a really good foundation here, but you're right. Owen Freeman needs help inside. And you saw that really at the end of last year. I thought, he and Ben Cricky worked well together, but you could see, especially down the stretch last year, I thought they played really well together. So you got to go find somebody like that to help him out. Otherwise, he's just going to get knocked around all year, and I think that becomes problematic if that happens.
He needs to expand his offensive game a little bit too. Needs to get a mid-range and face-up game a little bit more, and knowing Owen and how hard he works. He's kind of like he's got that Luka in him where they just work and work and work. He'll get it.
That's a summer project, I think,
Yep.
and I think that I think last year was let's get him acclimated to playing in the Big Ten, and that didn't take very long. And so now you know what you can do, and you know what you can, how the game is. Now you expand on that, and I think he will do that. I'm like you said, I think he's a hard worker. I think he understands the craft, and I think that will just make him that much of a better player this year. I think that jump he is going to make is going to be really impressive in my mind.
And I know I don't think any of us have inside information on this and have kind of just watched what's going on as he goes through the process, but what's kind of your feel on Sanford? Do you think Peyton Sanford, that is?
Yeah.
When I heard he was testing the waters, I'm figuring, this is like a Peter Jock, the
Yep.
first year Peter did it to those guys, just go through the process. Patrick did it, just go through the process. This one's starting to feel like he may stay.
And I saw somebody the other day kind of
stay in the draft. That is, I'm sorry.
I thought I think just kind of what I've been seeing from the draft experts and they're a little bit more in tune sometimes than the NFL draft experts.
I agree.
And they're all thinking that he's going to stay in, and even if that means he's a second round pick, he's okay with that. And so I'm at that point right now where I will be surprised if he returns.
Wow.
And I don't mean that in a negative sort of way, because I really like Peyton and whatever he does, he's going to be very good at. But I don't think he's coming back. And so I think if you're Fran, I think you've got to look in the portal for a wing guy. And I think that becomes another thing you look at. So, I think he's, you're going to have to find some experienced help here. I think there's a good foundation. I think there's guys to step in, but the way this league is now getting with transfers everywhere and older guys, it's going to be hard to just it's going to be hard to have a developmental team. And, you're going to have I think you're going to have the intangibles to be successful. And I think you'll be really good at the, from about January on. But I think you need to get a little experience here. And I think that's going to be one of the things I think you really have to look at that portal pretty hard.
Yeah. With Peyton, I wonder, John, if he's asking himself and the NBA people, how much can I improve my stock by coming back?
Right.
I think we kind of know what he is and what his role would be at the next level. He's shown that here, which is, a shooter, off the bench shooter, Duncan Robinson type, somebody that's going to be a dead eye, quick release. He's gotten so much better with his release now. And I just don't know how much he would help that by coming back another year on a team that's somewhat rebuilding, replacing a lot at the very least. That makes it that much more of a difficult decision for him. He comes back. He is the guy in Iowa City, and that could help him. But I don't know. The the NBA is weird on how they evaluate. They like him. They don't want older guys. I remember that was a knock on Keegan. Oh no, he's 21.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
They want the younger guys 1 year out. So he could actually come back, play better, and it still hurt him because he's a year older.
Right. I mean, that is the question that when they give him that evaluation, because a lot of guys have gone into this and they've come back with the idea of, I will improve my stock. I can go from a second rounder to a first rounder. They may tell him you're going to be a high second rounder this year. You're going to be a high second rounder next year. Just the way that the way the draft works. And it's like, so are you really, and it's like this, they may tell him the time to go is now. And if that's the case, and I think he's kind of made that case that may, I mean, I think he's shown them that he can play right now. Because like I said, when you're still getting that buzz about this time of year, and you're seeing it from these draft experts who I think are really in tune with what's going on, and the fact that he got invited to the combine, and I know a lot of guys got invited to the combine, but there's a lot of handwriting on the wall that says to me he's not coming back.
Yeah, and I think it's probably gone under the radar a little bit for folks, just because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind right now. But definitely something people should keep an eye on and consider when looking ahead at the 24-25 Iowa basketball team, because that's obviously you take Perkins, Peyton Sanford, and Patrick McCaffrey off of that roster. Yeah. That's a lot to replace.
Yeah,
and Cricky.
Yes, and I mean, so you're bringing in guys that like you said are really talented, but you haven't seen them play yet. And so it raises a lot of question marks when you do that. To erase some of those question marks, I think you need to go get some experienced guys in the portal, and they're there. I mean, there's a lot. I mean, when you think about the number of guys that are in the portal, there's some guys there that you might be able to be that might be like that are really good players that can give you good minutes. That might just Iowa's calling, let's go there. They don't think about NIL and some of that stuff. So, you're going to have to really do some more work in there. And I think over the next few weeks to find guys.
And just a reminder for folks, Joe Wieskamp left after 3 years at Iowa and was a second round pick and is in the G League now. But I would say, I think Joe was a little bit more established than Peyton just as one of the guys, but I could see some similarities there.
Yeah. And so, I mean, there's options there. And again, this is, make more money in the NBA, or the G League or whatever, then maybe he's getting NIL here.
Yeah.
So, and I think that has a lot to do now with decisions on whether to come back. So we'll see what happens, but I would be surprised if he came back. I just think that the handwriting is on the wall that he's going to go.
So we look at it, if we go with that scenario, you've got Thelwell and what's his name?
Really good, by the way. And Brock Harding.
Brock Harding as your point guard. I think that's in pretty good shape.
Sure it is. That's a really good, and I mean, in Thelwell's case, I mean, he's played for really good.
He's a winner.
At the mid, he's won a lot of games.
Yeah.
And I saw him play this year at Moorhead, and and not only has he played has he played on the winning team, he's played in big games. I mean, he played with Illinois in the NCAA tournament, and they kept Illinois. I mean, they challenged them until about the last 10 minutes. As an OVC guy, as I keep saying, as an OVC aficionado, that was a really good pickup for them. So they're really set at that spot in my mind.
And I think if you look at Josh Dix at the 2, and because I hesitate to use numbers and positions anymore, because it seems like as we go forward, there's more and more position basketball, which I like, by the way. I like guys that can do different things. But if you think about Price Sanford, Cooper Koch, as wing guys, I think, the 2-3 spots, I think those are in pretty good shape too. And you've got, other guys coming back from last year as well. It's just a matter of, like you said, do you want to add, do you think Peyton's going to go, and do you need an experienced perimeter scorer to replace him? And then obviously, I think, as we said, I think you need to add somebody on the inside. So I think 2 guys probably if Peyton doesn't come back. And there are a lot of, like you said, there are a lot of guys in the portal. And the one thing you can knock Fran for a lot of things, he can identify talent. If there's
Yes.
anything we've learned over 14 years, the guy knows how to identify talent,
Right.
whether it be the high school level or the college level.
Yeah, and so I don't worry about him finding guys, and I also don't worry about him developing guys. I mean, because I think there are some guys on that team, Laji Dembele's one, Price Sanford's one, that I really want to see the step they take from freshman year to sophomore year, because they had flashes last year. And so if they can take that big step from year one to year two, that kind of eases your depth concern a little bit. And I think they can do that. And I think Fran knows how to get that out of guys. So, again, I still think you need an experienced, I mean, obviously you need an experienced guy inside, but if you can get an experienced wing guy, that makes you even better. So again, if you got scholarships to play with, see what you can find out there in those situations.
Yeah, no doubt. And if you can find another Philip Rebracha, that would be great. And look about how much better he got from year one to year two at Iowa, John.
Yeah. And I mean, and that was an adjustment. Again, he made an adjustment because there was a big learning curve going from the Summit League to the Big Ten. Once he figured it out, he was really good. And so, again, if you can find a guy like that, if you can find a Ben Krikke type, by all means, you got to go get him, because I think that just makes your interior game that much better.
I know from women's basketball, they are at 15 scholarships, but they are still looking for a post player in the transfer portal. I saw Chad. I'm looking through Chad's feed because I know Chad had something on this. Chad Leistico from the Register had something on this yesterday. Miriam, is it Duda or Dowda, 6'4" from Arkansas? Mm-hmm. Do we know anything about her, John? And when I say we, I mean you.
I think there's some. It adds going back to what we've been talking about. It adds an experienced post player, which or an experienced forward that you kind of helps you, really kind of control. It kind of identifies where Hannah Stuelke's going to be, and then you get her in there. That makes that front court a lot better, in my mind. And again, because they've got some inexperience, they've got some really talented players coming in. There's a lot of inexperience there. So if there's an experienced player to go get that can help you out, and you can figure out what you're going to do with your scholarship limit, I think you got to do it. And so I from what I understand and from what I've read, there's a lot of competition for her. So this is one of those ones you're kicking the tires on. And if you get her, great. If not, okay, you're going to roll with what you got.
Kind of like Lauren Betts last year.
Yes, it's like, doesn't hurt to look, but
aim high and maybe you hit.
Yeah, and there's a mutual interest, and I mean, if there's a mutual interest, then obviously maybe somebody in her camps reached out. You have to look, and I mean, again, that's where this world has changed a little bit. That you no matter what you think you've got, you're always looking now, and I think you're always looking for, how can we get better? And I think this is one of those situations of, if we get her, we're getting better.
I'm going to go with Dowda.
Okay.
Dauda. I don't know. Again, I know how to spell it. It's Dauda. She was a McDonald's All-American in 2021, Jordan Brand Classic 2021, semifinalist for Naismith High School Player of the Year 2021. She was hurt, so she had to sit out in redshirt 21-22. But played 35 games off the bench in 22-23. And then this past season started all 33 games, blocked 74 shots. She had 10 blocks in a game, John, against Alabama. So that gives you some serious rim protection that Iowa really hasn't had. I'm trying to remember somebody. Megan could protect the rim at times, but Monica was an okay defensive player, but this is a different type of player than I think they've had.
And what it does then is, if you've got that inside, then it allows you to move Hannah Stuelke to the 4.
Mm-hmm.
Where I think she is you talk about a game that could really explode from a good season this year to, that would be, if you could get this and put those two together, that makes you really, really good inside. Because again, they need experience. They've got a lot of question marks with this team coming in. There's a lot of talent there, but you don't know where it fits, and there's a lot of inexperience there. So, by all
Wasn't
means,
that the thing I think that people may take for granted is that, yeah, you lose, arguably the greatest women's college basketball player ever, but you lose those other players that were used to playing with her. Those guys those women all knew how to play with you. Now you're bringing in, other than Hannah, 4 new starters. How do they fit together?
Yes, and that's the thing. I mean, because you're losing a lot of intangibles here.
Yeah.
And I mean, as good as obviously as good as Caitlin Clark was, Kate Martin was really good. Gabby Marshall was a very good defender and was really a good shooter when she was on. There's a lot that was lost from this team.
And Molly Davis, before she got hurt, was a huge part this year. She was like Rebracha in terms of going from year 1 to year 2, that jump she made. She was super important because if they ended up going with a small lineup with her after trying O'Grady as a starter earlier in the year and going big. And I think it worked for them having her out there. But now it's out, if you get a big post, you go back to more of that traditional look.
Right. And so, I mean, there's going to be a power vacuum here. It's like, who's going to fit in here? Where, I mean, obviously you got Cynthia Folter back. You know what she can do. She started for you down the stretch. You got Hannah Stolke back. You're bringing in a player that put up a lot of points. It was the 3rd leading scorer in the country. How does she fit in now to this lineup? You're bringing in a lot of young kids. How do they?
That's Lucy Olson for people that don't know.
Lucy Olson
from Villanova.
Right. So you bring her in with her points. This, again, there's a lot of question marks with this team that it can be really good, but you don't know where it fits. So if you can get an experienced post player, that really kind of eases your mind a little bit in some situations.
I'll miss Caitlin and Kate and all those guys. But I'm also very intrigued to see what this looks like post that senior class, because they won so many games and we've gotten so used to them being around here. I'm always interested in seeing what's next.
Right. And I will say this about them, and it reminds me a lot because I was this way after Megan Gustafson left. And everybody was really kind of wondering what that team was going to be like. Kathleen Doyle stepped into that and had an unbelievable season. And I went back and I looked at that team because I remember, because that was a team that probably could have hosted a first weekend in the NCAA tournament. It was kind of, so I mean, that was a big step up from what everybody was. And I went back and I looked at that team. That team won a lot of games. That team also got its ass kicked a couple of times. And so I think people are going to have to realize that may be what this season is. You're going to have a team that wins a lot of games, and then there's going to be some games where they just don't play well. And so, it's going to be a transition year because I think there's really good talent that is coming in this year and is coming in next year. That's going to be, I think, maybe the next big run that comes. This is a transition year, but I still think they can win 20-some games.
Yeah, I think a reasonable goal is hosting.
Yep.
I think that's top 16 in the country is hosting. Maybe that's too aggressive of a goal. I certainly wouldn't be surprised if they don't host, because I think, like you said, there are just so many unknowns right now. We're going to need to see what it looks like.
Right. And like I said, I think the talent is there.
Yeah, I agree.
Where does everybody fit in? Who becomes the voice of that team? Who becomes the voice in the locker room? What's the dynamic behind the scenes that you haven't had to worry about the last couple of years? So there's going to be a lot of things that have to happen with this team, but I think the pieces are there. It's just, where do they all fit?
I'm a big fan, not only because I had her on my prospect podcast, but I've watched her game a lot. But Ava Hayden, 6'4" kid coming in from Oregon, I think it'd be great if you got a transfer to help her kind of have a chance to ease in. But I also think she could have an Owen Freeman type impact if she plays. And I think the coaches are probably looking at that too. It'd be great if we got a post player out of the portal, But if it doesn't happen, we may just have to go to Ava Hayden a little bit earlier and lean on her a little bit more.
Right. And again, there'll be a learning curve there. What's really been interesting is when you look at some of the posts that Lisa has had, and and you think about where Megan Gustafson was year one, year two.
Yeah.
Monica Sonano from year one to year two. Hannah Stolke from year one to year two. So whatever you get out of Ava Hayden this year is great, but what does she do next year? So like I said, this feels like a transition year, but it's a transition year, I think, when this team can still win a lot of games and
I would also
be really good and still be really good.
I would caution people not to dismiss Addison O'Grady either.
No.
I know she's been inconsistent, but she's flashed at times. If she can find consistency, I think it's in there, John. It's just a matter of her just being able, and I think of it, some of it's up here.
Right.
I think she makes a bad play or two. She has trouble recovering from that, missing a shot, maybe not catching a pass from Caitlin. If she can move on from the mistakes and just play, I think the talent is there.
Yeah, and I think that is probably the biggest hurdle with her. And because, like you said, she's had big minutes for them in big games over the last couple of years. Now the key becomes, can you do that every night?
Yep.
Or most every night. And that's going to be the biggest. I think that's going to be one of those questions you got to answer.
And what a bonus that would be if she does figure it out and does put it all together. That could change the dynamic on this roster a whole lot.
Yeah, there's a lot of steps. When you look at this roster, there's a lot of players. She's one, Taylor McCabe's one, that if they can, Kylie Feuerbach's one, that if they can really step up and give you really good minutes, you're in much better shape. And it's like, so there's they've been they haven't had to do that the last couple of years because you had the big three and you had, now you get okay, now you're giving these kids a chance. What are they going to do with it?
Will be fun to see. It's a tough act to follow, so to speak. And there's going to be there's going to be a drop off. We'll just have to see how much of a drop off there will be. But I think, as John said, I think they're well positioned to continue on and continue to be one of the better teams in the Big Ten. Some of the other Big Ten teams have added through the transfer portal too. And oh, by the way, you've got some pretty good teams coming in from the Pac-12.
You're adding a number 2 team in the country and a number 5 team in the country. So the business is about to pick up.
Yeah, so, no doubt.
Yeah. So like I said, I would caution fans, have fun with this and watch it develop, but there are going to be some bad, when you have a team like that, there's always going to be those moments when they just have a really bad game.
Yep. No doubt.
And so you're just going to have to live with some of those, I think, and as they grow.
Yeah, no question. We'll see if they're able to add, and the men's basketball team are able to add, and the football team. We still have our eyes on the transfer portal here as we go through the rest of the spring into summer to see which Iowa programs add. Another one that we haven't touched on a lot, John, and I want to get to a little bit because I know you were out this past weekend watching Iowa baseball. For 2 of the 3 when they swept Northwestern. I think Iowa's 5th in the conference going into this weekend. Big trip to Illinois. If they could get 2 out of 3 there, a sweep would be great. But 2 out of 3 there certainly changes the outlook a little bit. And then they finish up with Florida International in Des Moines next weekend. And then the Big Ten tournament comes around. But it's been an uneven season for this team, John. Very high expectations coming in. Hasn't come to pass. It was the bullpen early. The starting pitching's been inconsistent. Brody Brecht has just taken it to another level. You saw him the other day. Yes. But it's unfortunate injuries too on this team. Yep. Some of their hitters. But I feel like if they could just get in, if they've got the 3 healthy starters. You know this in college baseball. If you have those 3 healthy starters, you got a puncher's chance in any tournament you're in.
Right, exactly. And the one thing I really like about him is now Brody Brecht has the look of an ace. I mean, I mean, you look at his numbers over the last three starts, and Rick Heller said that the other day that was one of those games where he looked like a complete pitcher. And it's been fun watching him. And again, I haven't been to a lot of the games, but the games I've seen when he's pitched and how much he's grown. And the other day was, I thought, maybe the best start I've ever seen him throw. And I mean, he was hitting his spots. He was getting guys out. He was, he was getting strikeouts. He would that fastball at 98 does not look like it's at 98 when you're sitting by no play, but it is. And I mean, he's spotting it. And he looks really good. So if you can roll that out in the first game of a tournament, and you win that game, and the way college baseball is, and the Big Ten tournament is that way, and the NCAA tournament is that way. If you win that first game, you're 20 steps ahead of everybody else. And so if he can go to Omaha and give them 7, 8 innings like he did the other day, that gives them a pretty good kickstart in that tournament.
Yeah, no question. And it's interesting now because he he began the season as the Friday starter. He's moved around a little bit on different days of the weekend. I think at this point, this weekend, I know it's nice to have him in the middle or the back. I almost think in Illinois, you put him at the front again and just try to get that series off to a good start. Maybe get that first one under your belt and then, maybe grab one of those next two.
The one thing Rick said about him the other day, with his start the other day, is that why he's been so successful here in this recent stretch is that he's not putting the weight of the world on every pitch.
Yeah.
I thought about that the other day because he gave up that double to open the game. And usually that would always lead to like a 2 or 3 run inning. And instead he gets an out, sacrifice fly that brought in a guy, gets the third out, and that starts a string of when he retired 12 in a row. So you talk about the maturity of a pitcher. That's what you saw. And so I do think you have to put him out early because, again, you're going to want to put him out really early in the Big Ten tournament. So if you play this weekend like it's a tournament, in my mind, because you got to get ready for that. And so, winning the Big Ten is a long shot. But if you can go down there and play it like a tournament, so throw him out in the first game. So it is like, and then see what happens. And I think you have to do that this weekend.
For those wondering, and will fully admit, this is not an area that I know a ton about. I follow it usually this time of year. The RPI, I don't know how much that weighs into selecting. I know it weighs in. I'm just not. Does it weigh in a lot? Well, Iowa's 98 today.
Yeah, and
so they're going to have to win the tournament. Yep. Big Ten tournament?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can do anything but. I mean, even if you make it to the championship game and lose, you're still not going to get in. The Baseball America projection I saw yesterday, I think had 2 or 3 teams or 2 teams for sure, and one was on the bubble. So, and none of those were Iowa. So you're going to have to go to Omaha and win the thing. And if you do that, then you're going to get, you'll get the automatic bid, but you've got to go there and win it.
And it's Florida International next weekend. Did I have that right?
Yes. Yeah.
They are 104 in the RPI and Illinois is 56. So even if you were to win 4 out of 6, 5 out of 6, I'm not sure, like you said, the RPI is going to push up enough for an at-large.
Right. And I mean, it is tilted towards the RPI is always tilted towards the Southern teams and the far West teams because they all play everybody. Everybody plays good teams on the midweek. And I was playing Bradley and Illinois State and Western Illinois, those type of schools. So it really puts a lot of pressure on you to have done well early in the season, and they didn't do that. So they've kind of dug the hole for themselves. And the only way you get out of it is if you win in Omaha.
Yeah, the North Dakota State loss midweek does not help either.
Yeah. And so those are the things. So like I said, you've only got one opportunity to get there. So now you got to kind of start setting yourself up because you're pretty much locked in at this point. I mean, you're in 5th place. you're far enough ahead of the ninth place team that you won't fall out of that top 8. But I think you want to go to Illinois and at least win one, just to be sure.
Yep, no question. And then you get to Omaha, and it's in your hands. You control your own destiny. So, if you're good enough to do that, then you deserve to get into a regional. And
see what happens.
Never know. You got your starting pitching that had the bar and the expectations high in the beginning of the season. They hit their stride at the end of the year. You can still hit those expectations and maybe make a run here.
Exactly. And Marcus Morgan on Sunday was okay for a while, but I think for you to be successful, he's got to give you 5 to 6 really good innings when you get into tournament play.
Well, I looked at Baseball America, their most recent amateur draft rankings. I think Marcus was like 150 or 148. Obermueller was in like the 120s or 1-teens. And then Brecht was 38, maybe. So you're talking about 3 starting pitchers at Iowa in the top 50 or top 150 of draft rankings. Yeah. That doesn't happen around here much.
No, it doesn't. and so, I mean, and they all have really good stuff. And Brody is going to be the one. I'm going to be really fascinated to see where he goes in the draft. But there's going to be people that want him because you can't teach 98.
No, and that slider is ridiculous. The slider might be better than the fastball.
Yeah, he can land, and he can land it too. That's the thing. And he got a lot of swords the other day. I mean, there were guys that were check swings that just, and when you're doing that, there's something there. And, if he gets in an organization that can fine tune that, the Dodgers, I think that he'll be really, really good at what he does as he moves on.
Yeah, no question. That's Iowa and Illinois this weekend for the last Big Ten series for the Hawkeyes. And then if you're in the central Iowa area, you can go over and check the Hawkeyes and Brody Brecht at it's not Sec Taylor anymore. What's the name?
Principal
Park. I like to call it Sec Taylor to annoy people.
Yes,
it's not Sec Taylor anymore.
Well, I still call the River Bandits ballpark John O'Donnell Stadium, Modern Woodman Park. So.
Last thing before we get out of here, just miraculously, John, the WNBA found the money for charter flights.
Yes.
It's a Festivus miracle in May.
Yes. It's funny. I don't follow the league that much before this year, but I know that was one of the biggest complaints. And I honestly thought that if you ask the players what would they rather have, bigger salaries or charter flights, I think they would have chosen the charter flights. That's the Caitlin Clark effect. That is, they're seeing money coming. And I think they're saying, okay, let's do this now. And you're already seeing the effect, they were complaining about, certain players didn't have shoe deals, but she did. Well, now all of a sudden those players are getting shoe deals. So the rising tide has come
I think the other players and other people that are in the league are starting to understand it now. Right. Now that it's with them, they're starting to get it and we love Caitlin.
Yeah,
so happy.
Exactly. It was so funny when she was facing all that criticism. There was some guy that I follow on Twitter, and he's kind of a smart ass, and he said, yeah, okay, let's kill your golden goose. And he goes, enjoy flying Spirit Airlines and have your $20 a day meal. And the Spirit Airlines part probably wasn't far off. Because they were taking early morning flights, and they were, and they were crammed in the coach and all that other stuff. And it's like, now all of a sudden everybody's realizing that, hey, we got the money, we can do this. Because they're starting to see the ticket sales, and they're starting to see the kicking around of ideas on what to do with her, and what to do with this newfound attention. And, can it sustain it? I think it can. But now they're starting, like you said, now that it's a reality, to quote Diana Taurasi, I think they're realizing the reality is, hey, we can make a lot of money off this.
Yep, it's good for everybody. Like you said,
Yeah.
rising tide.
Yep.
First exhibition for them game for them last Friday, John. I did not get to see it, but statistically looked good. Watched some of the highlights. I I know there was some Tarasi being one of them that there's a wake up call coming. A real reality will slap her in the face. She's going to be fine. She's going to be able to score, but I think her assist totals are going to be insane.
Oh yeah. Oh, there's no doubt about it, because I think she's going to realize that she's going to let the game come to her. That's what she did for 4 years here.
Mm-hmm.
And is she going to struggle at times? I'm sure there probably will be some games.
Yep.
Because one of the things that we all have to remember is that she's now playing a second season in a year.
Yep.
And it's like, I don't care how good a shape you're in, that's going to take a toll on you after a while. So she will have some clunkers, but they will be very few and far between. And she's going to learn. I mean, you can already tell that she's learned what she can do. And we're going to see. I mean, like I said, I have no qualms thinking that she will make the adjustment very well, and she's going to be very good, because that's how she is.
Looks like the season opens. Is it May 14th?
Yeah.
Is it 5 days away?
Yep.
They have an exhibition, one more exhibition game tonight. Preseason game against the Atlanta Dream at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. This one is home. They were at Dallas last Friday. And then the opener is Tuesday, May the 14th, and that is at the Connecticut Sun at Mohegan Sun Arena.
Yes.
In Connecticut.
Yes.
So
they embraced the gambling long before anybody else did. But yeah, it tonight will be interesting. The one thing I had to laugh when I saw some of the video from her game is there was one where she went up against JC Sheldon, and then like she made a move and JC Sheldon fell on it. Like, how would you like to be that girl that for 4 years you had to deal with that at Ohio State? And it's like, oh shit, my first WNBA game and I got to play her again. So it was funny to watch, and so like I said, I can't wait to watch her play, because I think she's going to be a star, and she's going to bring that star quality to the league, and so it'll be fun to watch.
it looks like Tuesday's game is on ESPN Plus, ESPN2.
Oh yes, it's the ESPN2 game. Yes, they have
and
a double
TSN.
header. Yeah, they have a double header that night. So
that'll be cool. And then it's the New York Liberty next Thursday, and that one is the home opener in Indianapolis, and that one is on Amazon Prime Video.
Yes.
So I think you'll be able to find most of their games. It's just you're going to have to move around a little bit. And I toyed with the idea of buying the season ticket, the WNBA ticket. It's like $35 for the season, and you get every game. So that's an option for folks out there too, if they're interested in doing that. Then you can go right to that. You don't have to find it,
and it won't be blacked out like MLB. So, and I noticed the other day that they're adding some games that we'll be able to get here in the state on like a lot of digital channels. Like there's a digital channel in Davenport that we get here that we can watch the games on. So you'll be able to see a vast majority of her games. And like you said, and if you buy that WNBA pass, you'll see them all.
So I'm sure this is going to be fun here. We got 5 more days before the Caitlin Clark show reopens the regular season, and it's going to take I think this is going to be, with what's going on now, and with the NBA season winding down and baseball season being so long, I'm really intrigued to see what this league can do this year and how much growth it can make this summer. I think it'll be fun to watch.
Oh, somebody kicked around the idea of when they play the Chicago Sky about playing at Soldier Field and doing like what I did.
Yeah.
You sit there and you wonder what that would draw.
They can't do it at Ryan Field.
Yeah, well, no, God rest its soul. But my God, the press box is still standing though, which I don't know why. But anyway, But I mean, when you think about that, in the fact that it's even being that subject's being broached says to me that they know that they've got a gold mine coming, I think. And so now it becomes, well, what do you do with it? So the charter flights, I think, are probably the first start. So
Yep, and it'll be interesting to see if the league, and it's good that the league has, the support and is part of the NBA too, which has done such a great job with marketing its players through the years. So the opportunity is there, no doubt, for this to get pretty big.
yes, and there's a rating. I mean, the TV ratings are the biggest thing because if you can prove that, and it's not just her games, but the other games, that if you can prove that when that next media deal comes up, now you can charge more. But again, the landscape is changing really rapidly. And, so I think you've got to capitalize on this now when you have the chance.
Again, that is, there's a game tonight. You guys can probably find that. I think if you buy the WNBA pass tonight, you can probably watch that game. It's 6 o'clock Central Time. It doesn't have a TV on their official schedule, so you're probably gonna need the league pass to get that. And then games after that, they have 3 games next week: ESPN, 2, Amazon Prime, and then ABC Saturday, May 18th, from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, Indiana, and the Fever and the Liberty on ABC, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That says a lot right there.
Right, exactly. Put that on the air like that. Yeah, it's they're getting the impact, and now they're going to get what we got. So
about to have some fun, folks. It's kind of nice that we didn't have a long layoff between the end of her college career and the beginning of her pro career. I'm sure she probably would have liked a little bit more time to exhale, but she does such a good job of handling herself and dealing with everything that comes her way. That's to me, John, is as amazing as anything she does on the court is how she handles herself off of it.
yes, exactly. And I there were times this year when I kind of felt sorry for her. And
Me too.
I kind of felt bad from our perspective because we didn't get the kind of look that we had gotten the first 3 years. I mean, she was very, very more contained this time. And she's such a great person and great personality. And she was joy to cover for 4 years. And now everybody else is figuring that out. So, it's going to be fun to watch and see where this goes next. I'm going to put a plug in. And I've been putting this on Twitter. There is a book coming out, and it's going to the publisher this week. It's kind of a behind the scenes photo book of this women's basketball team, produced by the Daily Iowan and the journalism school. I helped edit the book. It is a fascinating book, and you could kind of see the players kind of really got comfortable with photographers later in the year. And there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I think people will really love out of this book when they get it.
Look forward to seeing that. Where can people find a link to order that?
If you go to the Daily Iowan, it's dailyiowan.com. And I think it's just /book. And I think and you can click on it there. And I think it's available on the School of Journalism and Mass Communication website too. I'm not sure what the price is. I know they've sold quite a few books already. They've had a pre-sale. Some of the money goes to the Children's Hospital. So I would check it out because it's a fascinating book, and it's a good commemoration of what they did this year. And it's fascinating, the behind the scenes stuff.
Check that out. DailyIowan.com. Get that book. Make a good Christmas present, good holiday gift for people. You can do birthday gift, graduations coming up. People might want it for that. A lot of good stuff going on.
Exactly.
So go check that out at dailyiowan.com. John, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for sitting in for Doc.
Glad to do it.
Appreciate you doing it. For those that don't know, John and I have known each other for going on 30 years. Been doing this a long time.
Yes.
And the landscape has changed, but we've remained on it somehow.
We're the old dudes, yeah. So.
We're a part of the old dude faction, and appreciate him sitting on for Scott. I assume Scott will be back next week. Hopefully he's enjoying his well-deserved vacation, and we'll be back next week to talk about kind of the same shit we've been talking about all spring: transfer portal, roster management, roster acquisition, roster retention. It's a lot different than when I moved here in 1997, John.
Oh yeah, it's a totally different world, and it's fascinating to watch and to see where it goes, because you never know. You really never know sometimes.
Yep, always stuff to talk about, and we'll be back to do that next week here on the Hotspot podcast. I'll be back on Tuesday for the mailbag, and then I'm also working on some other kind of specialty podcasts that I hope to do this month that I'll tell you more about if I'm able to line up those interviews. But check out the feed, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Hit the like button. We appreciate the support. We appreciate the support from all of our sponsors. Thank you guys for listening, and we will talk at you soon. Peace.